The cock crowed thrice, its cry echoing through the red hills of Umuaka. Smoke curled into the pale morning sky from mud huts, carrying with it the smell of roasted yam and burning firewood. Women's voices rose as they pounded fufu in wooden mortars, while children chased each other barefoot in the dusty paths. In one corner of the village, a young girl knelt in the cold sand, sweeping the ground of her master's compound. Her name was Adah. Her wrapper hung loosely around her thin waist, and her hands were rough from endless work. Beads of sweat rolled down her forehead as she pushed away dust that would return as soon as the wind blew. Adah was not born in Umuaka. She was a daughter of another town far across the river, but war had swallowed her home. Her father was cut down in battle, her mother dragged away screaming, and her brothers, she did not even know if they lived or perished. Adah herself was tied like a goat, sold in the market, and brought to Umuaka as a slave. Now, every dawn she rose before the roosters, carrying out chores while other girls her age laughed on their way to the stream. When she walked to the well, women hissed and whispered. Look at the servant girl. Even the gods turned their backs on her people. Children threw stones, calling her Onye Ohu, servant. She never answered them. She bent her head and carried her water, her pain sealed behind silent lips. But Adah's silence was not weakness. Inside her chest burned a stubborn fire. At night, when the moon hung like a calabash in the sky, she whispered to herself, "Chains may bind my hands, but not my spirit. I will not remain in tears forever." One evening, an old woman in the village passed her by and stopped to stare. Her eyes were clouded with age, but sharp as a hawk's. She said, "Nwanyi, wipe your tears. Do you not know that the gods do not forget their own? Your story has not finished." Adah did not understand her words, but they stayed in her heart like an ember waiting for flame. Ikenna was the pride of Umuaka, the only son of King Nnadozie and heir to the ancient stool of their ancestors. From the day of his birth, the royal gong beat louder, and the diviners declared, "This child carries the weight of the kingdom in his spirit." Yet as Ikenna grew, the elders often whispered that he was not like other princes. While his friends boasted about their father's barns full of yam, their cattle, and their many servants, Ikenna found no joy in prideful talk. He preferred to walk barefoot along the dusty paths, listening to the village drummers, watching children play by the riverbank, and sitting quietly with the old men who told stories of the past. At night, when other young men his age gathered in the palace courtyard to drink palm wine and boast of their strength, Ikenna would slip away to the hills, staring at the moon until sleep caught him. He often wondered why his heart felt too heavy for the crown that had not yet been placed upon his head. King Nnadozie and his queen grew worried. "Why does he walk among the common people?" the king thundered. "Does he not know he is the lion's cub?" The queen added, "He is of royal blood. He must marry from the royal line. We cannot allow him to stain the throne with common blood." But Ikenna's heart was not stirred by maidens dressed in coral beads and fine wrappers. He felt a strange emptiness each time his parents paraded noble daughters before him. Their laughter rang hollow in his ears. Something deeper called to him, something he could not name. At times he would dream of a woman's eyes filled with pain yet glowing like fire in the dark. When he woke, his chest would pound as if he had run 1,000 miles. One evening, Ikenna sat by the old Iroko tree with his closest friend, Chike. "Do you ever feel he asked, staring at the horizon, "that your path is not the one your fathers chose for you?" Chika laughed. "You think too much, Ikenna. You are a prince. All doors will open for you. Why question destiny?" But Ikenna shook his head. "No," he thought. "It is destiny itself that is questioning me." And so, while the palace dreamed of his grand wedding to a noble princess, Ikenna's heart beat restlessly as if waiting for a moment that would change his life forever. The stream at Umuaka was always alive with chatter. Every morning, maidens with clay pots on their heads walked in groups, their laughter echoing through the forest path. They gossiped about festivals, about young suitors, and about the latest mischief in the village. But for Adah, the stream was not a place of joy. It was a place where her shame was displayed. Her wrapper was old and faded, her shoulders thin from hard labor. When she approached, the other girls often lowered their voices, then burst into cruel laughter. That morning, the sun was sharp on the sand and the stream sparkled like liquid glass. Adah bent to fill her pot, but her tired arms trembled. As she tried to lift it, her foot slipped and the heavy pot crashed to the ground. The sharp sound split the air. Water spilled quickly into the sand, leaving her knees wet and her heart pounding. The other girls laughed. One whispered loudly, "Even to carry water, the useless servant girl is weak." Another added, "Maybe her people's gods cursed her before they perished." Their laughter was like knives against Adah's skin. She lowered her head, shame burning in her eyes. Tears threatened to spill, but she bit her lip and remained silent. She had learned that servants' tears drew no pity. Then a shadow fell over her. Strong hands lifted the clay pot with ease as if it weighed nothing. Adah's eyes widened when she looked up and saw him. Prince Ikenna. He stood tall in the morning sun, his wrapper tied neatly, ivory beads circling his neck. His gaze was not mocking, not pitying, but full of compassion. He handed the pot back to her gently, as if she were not a servant, but someone worthy of dignity. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Adah's shame-filled eyes met Ikenna's kind ones. Her heart stumbled, confused by the warmth she felt. She wanted to look away, but she could not. The other girls fell silent. Whispers began. The prince. He spoke to her. They stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what they had just seen. Adah finally lowered her gaze, murmuring a faint, "Thank you, my prince." Her voice shook like dry leaves in the wind. Ikenna nodded. No one should carry such a burden alone. And then, as quickly as he appeared, he stepped back, leaving the girls whispering behind him. From that day, something changed. Adah found herself glancing toward the path whenever she went to the stream, and Ikenna, though he told himself it was mere coincidence, always seemed to pass that way whenever Adah fetched water. He watched her silently at first, then began to greet her. A nod, a smile, a question about her day. For Adah, each word from him felt like rain on dry earth. For Ikenna, each moment with her stirred the restlessness in his heart into something he could no longer ignore. The stream of Umuaka, once a place of Adah's humiliation, was slowly becoming the place where destiny itself began to flow. In Umuaka, no secret stayed hidden for long. Words travelled faster than the wind, carried by tongues sharper than knives. At first, it was the guards who noticed. Each time Prince Ikenna passed the stream, their eyes followed. One muttered to another, "Does he not see how often his feet wander there?" Then the market women caught the scent of the story. They whispered while slicing okra and fanning charcoal fires. Our prince greets the useless servant girl as if she were a daughter of the land. I saw it with my own eyes. He lifted her clay pot." Laughter and disbelief filled the air, but beneath it all was a note of fear. Soon the whispers grew into murmurs that reached the palace courtyard. Servants repeated them behind closed doors. Chiefs exchanged knowing glances during council meetings, until at last the words found their way to the ears of King Nnadozie himself. The king's rage shook the palace like thunder. His voice roared as he struck the staff of authority on the ground. "Never have my ears become so unclean that they must hear such abomination. A bonded girl, a child of no name, no blood, no lineage. She cannot sit on the stool of my ancestors. The throne of Umuaka is not for a girl bought like a goat at the market." The queen tried to calm him, her voice soft but troubled. "My husband, the boy is young. Perhaps it is a passing fancy. His heart will return to the noble maidens when the time comes." But the king's eyes burned like fire. "No, a flame ignored will one day consume a house. I will not allow my son's foolishness to stain our family." Outside the chamber, the guards stood stiffly, pretending not to hear. Inside, the chiefs bowed their heads, hiding their smirks. Some secretly rejoiced. If Ikenna brought shame upon himself, their own sons might one day seize power. But Ikenna himself, when summoned, stood silently before his father's wrath. He did not argue, he did not shout. He only bowed respectfully, his lips sealed. Yet in his heart he knew the truth. It was already too late. His spirit had been captured, not by law, not by duty, but by love. Love for a girl who the world said was nothing. And in that love, Ikenna felt something greater than fear. He felt destiny pulling at him like the river pulls at its banks. The whispers in the palace were not just idle talk anymore. They were the beginning of a storm. King Nnadozie was not a man who accepted defeat easily. When he saw that his son's eyes strayed only toward the slave girl, he set his mind on breaking the foolish desire before it grew into rebellion. First, he summoned maidens from noble homes, daughters of chiefs, granddaughters of warriors, girls whose bloodlines carried the weight of honor. They came adorned with coral beads, their wrappers shining with fine dye, their anklets jingling like music as they walked. The king organized a festival of maidens. The palace courtyard bloomed with color as the girls danced gracefully, their voices rising in songs meant to catch the ears of the prince. The drummers beat harder whenever Obina appeared, and the maidens smiled brighter, hoping to catch his gaze. But Ikenna's face was like carved stone. He clapped politely, he nodded respectfully, but his eyes were distant. He watched the dancers, but in his mind he saw only one face, Adah, bending at the stream, her hands trembling as she lifted a clay pot. When the dances ended, the king asked, "My son, which of these maidens pleases you? Speak, and I will bless the union." But Ikenna only bowed and said, "They are all beautiful, my father, yet my heart is not moved." The king's jaw tightened, but he said no more that night. Meanwhile, Adah lay awake in her small hut, her heart heavy with sorrow. She had heard the drums of the festival. She had seen the maidens pass, glowing like queens already. Alone in the darkness, she whispered, "How can a bonded girl ever be a queen? What foolish dream am I dreaming?" Her tears soaked the mat beneath her head. She feared Ikenna's kindness was only a passing fancy, a mercy that would soon fade when he chose one of noble birth. But the next evening, Ikenna found her by the stream again. Her eyes were red, her shoulders heavy with silence. He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. Adah, why do you cry? She shook her head quickly. I am nothing, my prince. A bonded servant cannot sit where queens sit. The people laugh at me already. One day you will see sense, and I will be left with only shame. Ikenna's hand reached for hers, his grip strong and steady. Do not let their words chain you. You are more than what people call you. You are who you choose to be. Adah's lips trembled. His words entered her heart like light through a crack in the dark. For the first time, she dared to imagine that perhaps destiny had not finished writing her story. But even as their bond deepened, danger grew. The chiefs whispered louder, the king's anger burned hotter, and the village divided between those who mocked and those who wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, the gods themselves had hidden a mystery inside the bonded girl. The trials of love had only begun. The oracle's voice carried like thunder across the village square. The elders sat on carved stools, their walking sticks pressed firmly to the earth. The women gathered at the edges, whispering in low tones, while the men leaned forward, eager to see who would dare face the gods. The one who will be queen, the oracle intoned, his eyes glazed as though he saw into another world, must pass the test of fire. She must walk through the flames of sacrifice without fear, for only courage can sit beside the crown. A great hush fell over Umuaka. The maidens brought by King Nnadozie, daughters of titled men, girls adorned with beads and anklets, looked at one another in terror. Their bangles clinked as their hands shook. One by one they lowered their eyes. None dared step forward.